Hello and welcome to India's Angels. I'm Shireen Bhan. The Rockefeller Foundation reports that impact investing is set to grow at an annual pace of 30% and that India is the second largest market for impact investing after the US, with $500 million worth of investments made in 2012 alone. But how does one define impact investing, and what are some of the different models at work in the Indian market? On India's Angels this week, we put the spotlight on this and a lot more.
Jayant Sinha of Omidyar Network talks to us about the importance of the two checkbooks method of investing in non-profits as well as for-profit social ventures. Also on the show, Vineet Rai of India-grown social investment firm Avishkar tells us why he doesn't like being called a social investor, even though he's pioneered the model in India.
When Pierre Omidyar saw his net worth cross $1 billion in 1998 as eBay listed on the capital markets, he knew he had to do more with his wealth that had come to him in just 3 years. So he set up the Omidyar Network, an organization that invests in promising social enterprises.
To date, the Omidyar Network, sponsored by Pam and Pierre Omidyar, has put in over $550 million in impact investments. The network operates with two checkbooks, investing roughly half its corpus as grants to non-profits, while the other half goes to early-stage social entrepreneurs whose businesses are perceived too risky by commercial investors. Omidyar set up shop in India in 2010 and has a portfolio of 27 organizations in which it has invested about $100 million. 70% of these are for-profit ventures.
The best and the brightest in India should not be thinking about investment banking jobs in London or New York or Tokyo. They should be thinking about starting great companies in India.
Venture philanthropy, impact investing, flexible capitalism. These are some of the terms that have been used to describe the approach that Jayant Sinha and the team at Omidyar Network have taken to capital investments in the social sector. But Jayant likes to keep it simple. He believes social impact and financial returns are a means to an end. And Jayant uses examples of two of his investee companies to explain to us how they operate. D-Light, a solar lantern manufacturer, and Treehouse, India's largest self-operated preschool chain.
The social impact cannot be an add-on. It's got to be built into the value proposition. So at Treehouse, they obviously track the number of children that are in their preschools. That's an impact metric, because we know if the child is in one of the Treehouse preschools, it's going to get a tremendous education and in doing so achieve social impact. Similarly with D-Light. D-Light, as you know, makes solar lanterns. So for every solar lantern they ship, they are actually substituting for a kerosene lantern. They're reducing people's cost of using kerosene. They're providing a much healthier alternative. They're reducing the risk of fire. So built into that solar lantern is already that social impact. You track solar lanterns, you're tracking social impact.
And this is what D-Light's social impact looks like. In 4 years, D-Light has empowered 10 million people across 40 countries with light. 2.5 million of these people are school-going children who have access to affordable solar lights. And Omidyar's contribution has come by way of risk capital and management expertise.
Omidyar Networks, brings way more than just the capital. And, one of the things is their human capital team, for instance, has helped us in recruiting top-notch, management team, and would have saved us nothing less than $500,000 in search fees and recruitment fees.
And former iBanker Rajesh Bhati of Treehouse has seen similar synergies in building his preschool venture. Rajesh set up the first preschool back in 2003 in Mumbai when he realized how expensive it was for even someone like him to put his son through school. Now Treehouse is a listed entity with 315 outlets across the country and a turnover of over 80 crore rupees. Rajiv believes he's on track to hit scale.
Apart from putting in valuable capital that the company needed for growth, has been a contributor in guiding us towards scaling up in some of the pockets in urban India where they have expertise in terms of their philanthropic efforts that they have conducted in the country. And what they expect from you is good execution, high integrity, loyalty, and last but not the least, at any given point in time when the private equity investor has to exit, it has to be an exit where the private equity investor finally has to be making money out of their investment, because that is their job.
And Treehouse has been more than worth their while, with all investors staying invested even post-IPO. In fact, the team at Omidyar is now guiding Rajesh on planning out his CSR initiatives. And it is this sort of guidance that Giant believes sets Omidyar apart from regular VC funds. Because along with its grant-making arm, Omidyar really is looking to build an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Most of what we do is for-profit investing, because that's where we can find a way to get scalable, sustainable solutions for people. But even in the for-profit sectors, there are many ways in which we can make non-profit grants. And the best example is microfinance. In microfinance, globally, we've invested in 27 organizations, of which 14 are non-profit and 13 are for-profit. And we've done that so that the entire microfinance sector itself develops. So for instance, in India, we've helped Sadhan, which is an industry association of microfinance institutions, to be able to put together a credit bureau so that people's credit histories can be sort of consolidated across various different microfinance institutions. So then we've given a $2 million grant to an organization called Microsave that actually trains business correspondents and microfinance agents to be able to practice responsible lending and so on. So even when we are doing primarily for-profit investing, as we've done in microfinance, there are a lot of ways in which we can help markets work better by doing grant making.
And for Omidyar, it's all about serving the market right. Giant was part of the committee appointed by the Planning Commission of India to evaluate the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country. Now, one of the key findings was that 90% of the capital funding for Indian ventures comes in from offshore sources, and even that inflow is not made to feel adequately welcome. Some of the key recommendations of this report include simplifying the tax code, setting up small business zones on the lines of STPIs that spurred the IT industry, and setting up a national entrepreneurship mission and a 5,000 crore rupee fund of funds.
5,000 crore fund of funds could be a very powerful idea to spur forward India's entrepreneurial economy. And the reason for that is that if you look at where it's been done elsewhere, for example in Israel and in Australia, it's been extremely successful. The idea here is that the government basically become an anchor investor, basically provide 20 or 25% of the corpus. You have other large financial institutions, whether they are banks, pension funds, endowments, insurance companies also participating. And once we have these financial institutions getting all these venture capital funds going, then there's plenty of capital available for our entrepreneurs, and it sends a very positive signal to entrepreneurs as well, letting them know that capital is available for the right kinds of startups.
With more and more young professionals making the switch to enterprise, Giant believes India's new age entrepreneurial ecosystem is coming of age. And here are the rules that he feels will put entrepreneurs at an advantage on the court.
Rule number one is, it's not about you. And this is part of our own Hindu philosophy as well, where we say ahankar tyag karo. And so the important question you always have to ask yourself, and I ask entrepreneurs, which is, are you willing to fire yourself as CEO, right? At which point are you willing to walk away, or are you willing to be able to give it to somebody who can perhaps do a better job than you? Because we all have our limitations, right? So are you prepared to fire yourself as a CEO? Because it's rule number one, it's not about you. I think rule number two is just good execution and being very buttoned up. I call it be buttoned up. It really means, sweat the details, think hard about, how you're going to execute a particular task, make sure it's done really in a world-class way. Infosys, again, Mr. Murthy is wonderful at that. He's always, somebody who wants you to do the best possible job that you can do. I've learned that from him, actually, is to be supremely buttoned up in everything that you do. And then rule number three, which I've learned from tennis, and you all tape me while I'm playing tennis, is that you have to lose before you can win. If you see, what Novak Djokovic or Andy Murray have had to do to become Grand Slam winners, they've had to lose a lot of Grand Slam finals before they become Grand Slam winners. And the reason you have to lose before you can win is that you have to be loose and relaxed. If you're always just focused, and again we're going back to the Bhagavad Gita here, if you're always just focused on the outcomes and only focused about winning and not really trying to play a beautiful game of tennis, you're not going to win in any case. So you have to let go, you have to release.
And if you play the game right, you will savor your success and learn to brave the disappointments as well. On that note, we'll take a break. But on the other side, we meet Vineet Rai of Avishkar.
We are very, very high risk. More than 50% of our capital is deployed in actually low-income states. So that could actually tell you that our capacity or appetite to go and take risk where returns are actually unexpected is very high.